paid 25. Are you recording me?
I'm recording myself.
Essentially, we're paying $25 to the church as a donation for every time we meet here, which in my math means we need to have 12 new members or memberships per year. That gets us flush on that. We have overhead expenses of about almost $600 of Zoom, website, feeds like that. That is typically made up out of the additional income beyond the 12 members that we have to have. We also have contests party every year. The contest is pretty much all the prizes are paid out of the revenue stream from the entries. Only thing that we need beyond that is our party in the room. So we're not making major money. We have about $1,200 in the account, so we're not rich. So if any of our equipment crashes, we can replace it, but that's about it. And thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Any questions for Suzanne?
Huh?
Are there any questions for Suzanne
Oh,
on that? Okay, I move that the treasurer's report be accepted. Once a year, it's good to have one. There are a couple of you here who have not actually paid dues yet for 2024. I know I've been very remiss about reminding people, so if you're not sure, maybe talk to Suzanne later on. Okay, talking about asking those of you who may have had recent awards or showing of your work to brag about yourself a little bit. Sharon.
I won a crisp dollar bill in the county fair. Living ribbon first place. Okay. For wildlife.
Wildlife,
So,
yeah.
yes.
what type of wildlife?
It was turkeys. Okay, had some turkeys in our front yard in February or March or something like that. Turkeys.
Anyone else? John?
Well, I didn't participate in the county fair this year, but I am participating in the artist studio tour,
Right,
which is coming up the 23rd to 25th of this month. My studio's at 58 Palm Court. Come on by, everybody.
And there's a website that has information about that.
Correct, yeah. You just search Pagosa Art Studio Tour.
Yeah.
There's a website there. It's got a map that lists all the participating artists. There's several photographers, lots of other good art. So it's a good way to support artists in our community.
So I encourage people to check up on that and as John said, support your local artists. And I especially suggest that you try to get over to John's place and see his studio. It's very nice. He's got some good work there.
So is there a fee for that?
No, it's free.
Okay. I was just trying to.
You can
figure out
pick
the
up maps
support.
at Visitor Center or Two Old Crows or a number of other places as well. If you want a paper map.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, Herb Grover is not here tonight, but he won, I guess, wanted to brag. He had some winnings at the fair. So I'll just read you what he sent me. He had a sandhill crane in flight image, which won grand prize, open adult division in birds. And a black and white image of a lone juniper won first prize in black and white category. A couple of second place photos, one for a bosky sunrise and one for an image he took recently at Silver Falls. And I think he said you were with him on that. Yeah. He also entered the La Plata County Fair and he had 3 photos there. One, and this is in the adult advanced category. He had a landscape from Rocky Mountain National Park, which got first place in its category. And second place for a sunrise of sandhill cranes. I think that was from Bosque also. And also an image of 2 ravens in the wildlife category. So he had some success there. And he also mentioned that he is now He now has a photo sales booth, which he calls it Herb's Field Notes, which is also his website, I think. And he did take part in a fine art show recently and sold a few images there. So he's going commercial, baby. He included a paragraph that I think brings home to me what I see as one of the big advantages of our little photography club here. And I'll just read you that. He says, "Whatever modest skills I have developed with my photography, I owe to the members of the photo club whose skills exceed mine, but whose patient mentoring has inspired me to keep at it." And, you know, part of our goal is to learn from one another. So I think that's something to take, to think about, when you come to photo club meetings and events. So, okay, I have a volunteer opportunity. The library touched bases with me and asked for a program, asked that the photo club do a program for them, part of their lifelong learning series. They have 2 open dates on October 17th or 31st. Would anybody be interested in doing a program for them?
What are they looking for?
Well,
Program about our club?
it would have a component about our club, but it could be also based on, you know, a photo topic. I did one for them about 6, 7 years ago, and which I did close up and macro photography. But I also, you know, spent some time talking about the club.
I could do Africa. If they're looking for somebody, because I'm doing it for the hiking club, you know.
Okay, would you have a preference on the date?
Yeah, 17th, I won't be here.
So it'll be the 31st.
No, 17th, I will be here, the
You will.
31st, I'll be
Okay, so
on the East Coast.
I'll touch bases with you later tonight and send your contact information to them.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. Okay, so upcoming meetings in September, Chris Roebuck is going to give us his presentation on polar bears to penguins, which I've been looking forward to for 2 years.
2 years. Takes a while.
Yeah, and October, I'll explain in a minute. I've had to rejigger the schedule this fall, so October is currently open. Are you maybe?
Yeah.
So maybe Dave will do his Deep Space Astro in October.
So the awards.
And then in November will be our digital photo contest awards ceremony. Gala.
Gala. Ooh, we're having a gala.
Yeah. So the reason that the schedule is shifted is that I had a few things come up that took some of my time and distracted the rest of it. So that I got way behind in planning for our contest. So we're shifting the contest by 1 month. Sorry about that. So I will have the entry forms and rules out in a week or so, definitely by the 25th of August. We'll have a deadline for submitting your photos, and this was a digital submission, will be October 9th, which is the date of our October meeting as well. The best way to submit your photos will be to use a Dropbox that we will set up. So you can just submit the files and put them in that Dropbox, and then they'll be there and easy for us to send out to be to the judges for judging. And then we will have the awards celebration on November 13th. And I could use a volunteer to help. That's October 13th. I meant November 13th. I could use a volunteer to help with that. Okay,
Andy, is that a Wednesday?
Yeah,
it should be a Wednesday.
yeah, it's,
It's our normal November meeting date. Okay, great. I love the way Doug is volunteering tonight.
I think I will.
He's a teacher. I liked all the leftover
I
pizza.
don't mean this. I got
another bill about it.
Okay, outings and events. This Friday, we have an outing to Summit Hill, to the ghost town, mining town, in our area. That was from maybe 4 years ago. So we're gonna be meeting at Tractor Supply at 8 o'clock on Friday morning to head up there. It's about an hour and 45 minutes or so drive to Summitville. The road is good by Forest Service standards, I suppose. I drove most of that road on Tuesday, and the hazards are, there are some potholes, there are some cattle, there could be some wildlife, there could be some ATVs, and there could be a logging truck or two. But other than that, it's a good road. So, you can photograph there as long as you want. There's a number of buildings kind of spread out to a couple of different groups. There is also immediately across the road from the ghost town is a super modern looking Superfund site. So you can always get great photos of it looking through the windows of the old buildings for a little compare and contrast. So that's this Friday. If you haven't let me know that you're interested in going, yeah, please do so. And you can, like I said, it's almost a 2-hour drive, but you can photograph as long as you like. It doesn't look like the weather's going to be a big issue on Friday, which is one of those good news, bad news things if you're into photography. There probably won't be clouds like this, but maybe a few. So we can photograph for as long as you like up there. I've been talking with Greg about a possible fall outing to the Aztec area.
May I interject? There will be no food up there. Bring food, bring water.
Yeah, good point. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, bring snack and or lunch, and bring clothing for changing weather like you would in high mountains anytime. And also I will have directions on Saturday morning for those of you who haven't been up there yet. But otherwise, it's just typical high mountain weather and scenery all over the place. And there are restrooms there. And there's a big parking area. Sometimes there are markings down around there too, so you might bring a longer lens as well. Okay. And I'll
Yeah,
talk,
as a provision.
put you down.
Yeah, as a
Okay.
provision.
Okay. So we'll talk later, I guess, and we'll get hopefully something set up for the Aztec arches, and we'll let you know in an email or at the next meeting. Other local events coming up is Color Fest is always great with all the hot air balloons and so on in September. And not exactly a photo opportunity, although it could be, there might be a red carpet. Daryl Saffer and Diane will be having the world premiere of Daryl's movie Wild Orchid Man on the Rocks at the Liberty Theater on the 25th of September. And I think that could be one of the social events of the season, as well as a phenomenal video, I'm sure. And Daryl has assured me that there will be a happy hour too. So.
Cash bar, but free admission.
Free admission. You can't make any money that way.
And
Well, maybe, a couple of grand.
ask Suzanne about money.
Okay, anyway, I encourage you to consider going to see Daryl's new movie. It should be great. And it's unlike some of his previous movies, it's not set in Australia, it's set here in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. Okay, also wanted to bring up a opportunity to learn and network with other photographers. The Outdoor Photo Alliance is sponsoring some conferences. This is a relatively new organization based here in Colorado. They are sponsoring a women's photography conference at Estes Park in February. And they're also planning to have a Durango conference, which, as they say, will be a co-ed conference. Date hasn't been determined yet, but they're working on that. And so that would be very handy for those of us here. So this information was sent to me by Shonda Aiken, who's a Durango photographer. Their group, their little tagline is that they are empowering connection and growth among those with an affinity for outdoor photography. So something you can check out on their website, outdoorphotoalliance.com. And our virtual shutter therapy on Facebook this month is on the topic of natural framing or framing using found objects like trees or structures or whatever to frame your photo, the subject of your photo. So if you want to take part in that, go to our Facebook page, which is on Facebook at Pagosa Photo Club, and use the comments to the post on this topic to add up to 3 of your own photos on this theme.
I'm just complimenting them.
Yeah, and yeah, thanks to Barbara for setting these up for us. It's one less thing for me to do. Okay, any other announcements?
Just looking quickly at the women's photography, winter photography conference. Is it because women are doing all the speaking, or can men go too? That's interesting.
I think the idea of the one in February is that it's only for women.
Okay,
And
I
I think it's largely women speaking too, but they're going to have a more open format for the one they're planning in Durango. So with that, then I'll introduce our speaker, Dave Anderson. I think most of you know him. Dave has lots of experience with both film and digital photography, going back a couple of years. And he has also experience with both medium format and 35 millimeter or full frame cameras. He's been a photo club member now for a number of years. Before he retired and moved to Pagosa Springs, he did research in chemistry and drug development and so on, and did a lot of mass spectroscopy. And he used artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques to help interpret a lot of those results. So he knows what he's talking about here. But most of all, I want to introduce him as being my really good friend now for over 50 years. So I'm going to hand it over to Dave. And let him do his presentation. Let's be moving over there. Back here. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to talk about uses of artificial intelligence in photography. So this first slide is an outline of the talk. I've divided it into 5 parts. First, I'll briefly introduce artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. Then there's a section on image analysis, which involves convolutional neural networks. And that sounds very techy, and it is, but that's the main tool for image analysis that's currently being used. I'll talk about extracting features from images, where features are small or large parts of the overall image. And I'll talk in a little bit of detail so you can understand how this works on the filters that are used to extract the features, which is kind of the heart of what artificial intelligence is doing. And then I'll talk about training sets of images, basically teaching the neural network how to do things. The third section will be use of AI and post-processing, and a lot of us are already doing this. Denoising an image, sharpening it, enlarging it if you have a very small image you want to make a big print. And I'll mention uses of AI in cameras and modern digital cameras. The fourth section will be modifying images with generative AI, and this gets into blurring the distinction between photography and digital art. So I'll talk briefly about diffusion models, which is one way to create an amalgam of your photographic digital image and a digital change to it from generative AI. I'll talk about outpainting, which is enlarging your image with generative AI. I'll talk about generative fill to remove objects, removing lines like telephone lines, replacing things like the sky or the background. I'll talk about style transfer, which is something that I discovered when I was doing some reading for the talk. I'd never heard of it before. And inpainting, which is using generative adversarial neural networks to put a new object into your digital image. And the last two slides will be on how to detect AI modified images, which is relevant to contests potentially. I'll give an example of that. And what I'm calling image defense. So if you don't want your publicly available images to be web scraped by the large AI companies for their training sets, there are ways to defend against that. They're kind of interesting. Okay, the next slide. This works. Does. Okay. So this is introducing AI and machine learning and deep learning. So all of this involves computer programs. So it's a subset of computer science, if you will. Artificial intelligence broadly is simulating basically parts of human intelligence by using computer programs. Machine learning is a subset of AI. These are computer programs that use mathematical algorithms to learn from data in training sets. And here a training set would be a large collection of images, digital images. These programs, after they've learned from training sets, analyze new data, which is your digital image that it's never seen before, to do what you ask it to do. It can classify the image, say an object in it as a dog or not a dog, or it can do other things to the image. Machine learning can improve over time in several ways, so it's kind of self-learning. One way is to include more images in the training set, so it's got more to learn from. These programs can analyze their incorrect predictions to see what they got wrong and then make some changes. The third way is human supervision. So you can tell the software what a right answer is. This is a dog, or a wrong answer. It's not a dog, it's a cat. So machine learning can learn in these different ways to improve over time. A comment about these programs is they recognize patterns and can analyze very large data sets of including billions of images for the generative AI models, where each image can have thousands of parameters. So this is too complicated for humans to do, but the software can do it. Deep learning is a subset of machine learning that involves multi-layered artificial neural networks, and I'll get into that a little more in the next several slides. It's modeled roughly over the brain visual cortex, which is how your brain sees images, with hundreds to thousands of software neurons that are interconnected to each other. In the brain visual cortex, neurons are densely interconnected with other neurons. So neural networks do the same thing. However, the human brain has roughly 10 to the 11th neurons with 1,000 connections roughly for each neuron. So these neural networks are ultra miniature human brains. They're maybe a 10 to the minus eighth scale of complexity compared to the human brain. Deep learning uses training sets, which I'll talk more about in several slides. Ideally, you want at least 600,000 different images when you look at the literature on these networks in the training set with up to 60,000 parameters per image. These deep learning networks automatically learn the important image features that characterize an image. So they're very powerful for analyzing digital images. Okay, this is going to explain convolutional neural networks that are at the core of artificial intelligence analysis of images. Sorry for the convolutional part of it being overwritten. I'm going to call these CNNs for short. So these are a subset of the deep learning algorithms. So overall, you start with an image, say, of the dog here, and then go through a series of processes iteratively to analyze the image. So convolutional layers and pooling layers identify the features in the image. We'll talk about features in a minute. The classification part of the network, fully connected layer, basically puts this information together to make a decision. In this case, if you're asking the question, is this a dog or not a dog? The output of this complicated process is a probability that that's a dog. And this is based on training set images as well as math. Other things look like dogs, like a fox or a coyote. So there could be a probability that this image is really a fox or a coyote as well. So in process A here, the math involved in this is what's defined as a neuron in the network, in quotes. And what it does is it applies a small sliding mathematical filter. It's a dot product scanned across the entire digital image, back and forth, to detect image features. And low-level features are small elements of the images. The edge of an object in the image, corners, textures. Higher level features can be objects, like a dog tail, faces or patterns. So what happens when you scan a dot product matrix across this is you generate two-dimensional feature maps. So this could be an edge map here. And the number of these corresponds to the number of different filters for features of the image. So depending on the complexity of the image, there can be from 32 to over 512 different features, each one produced by a different filter. Each filter is a dot product matrix, but they differ from each other. I'll explain that more in a minute. The pooling layers abstract these already abstracted feature maps further to identify more complex features of the image, like a face. This also reduces the dimensions of the image, which makes for faster computing. The combination of these layers identifies more complex objects. And that's important for making a final decision as to whether this is, in this case, whether this is a dog or not a dog. And finally, I won't get into this other than to mention that the fully connected layer outputs are converted to probabilities using something called a softmax function. So this is overall a convolutional neural network, which is at the core of analysis of images. Now, to analyze features, it's important to mention what you see differs from what the computer sees. So this is a very pixelated image of the number 8. It's deliberately pixelated where each square is a pixel. If this is black and white and has 8-bit depth, black pixels have an intensity of 0. White pixels have an intensity of 2 to the 8th, or 255 when you start from 0. So that's what you see. What the computer sees is a matrix of intensities for each pixel. So it's a two-dimensional array of numbers. This is called a tensor. So this is the subject that's analyzed by the CNN. It's this two-dimensional pixel intensity array. So in feature extraction, here's your dot product matrix here. It's a 3x3 matrix called a 3x3 pixel filter. There are 9 squares here, each with a number in them. These numbers are weights. And this is part of the image, maybe a corner of this image. And when you take the dot product, each square is multiplied by the number in the dot product matrix. So 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 0 is 0. It sums all these up. You get 5 here, and 9 squares turn into 1 square in abstracting the image and looking for a feature. This number 5 quantitates the particular feature that this filter is set up for and spatially locates that part of the feature there in the image. So this is done over and over again through the entire image. You could get an idea there a little better. This process is one convolution of the image for one feature. And remember, there can be up to 512 or more features if it's a very complicated image or a high resolution image. Graphically, what's happening is illustrated down here at the bottom of the slide. You start with a picture of a cat, run the CNN. Usually the first round detects edges. And so in this review article, this is an edge-enhanced image of the cat. You can see it's still a cat. The second round will detect more edges and shapes. As you go through subsequent rounds, the image of the cat gets more and more abstract to the point where you wouldn't know this was a cat unless you were putting the image adjacent to that one. You can see the 2 eyes there maybe. But in these later images, they don't resemble the starting image, but the abstracted pixels have information that's important for classifying the image. And so this looks like an abstract cat in sort of classification space. So this is how the CNN works. Now, one final slide on this, maybe the last final slide on it. A bit more about the filters. These matrices basically look like what they're trying to detect. So this 3x3 matrix here is an edge filter, and it detects vertical edges. So if you look at the ones, it kind of looks like a vertical edge. You can have larger filters to detect something more complicated than an edge. 5x5 filter can detect larger patterns and include more context in the features. So a 5x5 cross filter has ones there, like cross. 7x7 filters can detect even larger patterns and are useful for more complicated or high resolution images. The circular filter can detect circular features. If you look at the ones here, it's kind of like roughly like a circle. Cube filters are filters in 3 dimensions. So for a color image, I've been talking about black and white up until now. You have layers of red, green, and blue. And so the filter would detect in each of those layers, looking for features. So to reiterate, and this is from a different website, a cat with an edge filter becomes this image here where the edges are enhanced. Now I'm going to talk briefly about training sets, which are critical to the whole process. This is how the neural networks learn, sort of like going to school. The training sets have images with known and labeled objects, like a whole bunch of dog images labeled as dog, that allows these neural networks to learn right answers. Since the network needs to function with user-supplied images that aren't in the training set, you have to anticipate what might be in those images. So you got to construct your training set to have enough images to cover all the possibilities, reasonable possibilities of objects in user images that are fed into the network for analysis. So in this case, you want different breeds of dogs, different poses like running, jumping, on a leash, sitting in a car window, and with different backgrounds. The network also needs to learn wrong answers. So you need label images of not dogs. In this, if you wanted to be granular, you'd include animals that kind of look like a dog, like maybe a fox or a coyote, as well as other animals that aren't dogs, like a cat, and images with no animals. So these labeled training set examples allow the network to learn wrong answers. To account for different user images that will be presented in the training set, you want different image resolutions, images with different sharpness, different colors, a heterogeneous set of images. And all of these images, when analyzed, are used to derive filter weights for the final trained neural network, which is called a model. So that's a trained neural network. The process is shown here briefly. You start with the training image, you run the neural network and make a prediction, dog or not dog, for example. And then the prediction is analyzed by an error function. I won't go into that, to compare the prediction with the right answer. And then you run the neural network backwards, back propagating, and adjust the weights in the dot product matrix. Those are the numbers that analyze each pixel initially, to minimize the error in the error function and improve the prediction, dog or not dog in this example. You do this over and over again, you end up with a trained neural network, and the features that do the best job minimizing the error get the highest weights in their matrices. So this is called automatic feature selection. So you don't do it, the algorithm does it. Okay, now to some examples. These are sort of post-processing uses of artificial intelligence that a lot of us are already using on our images. So for this example, I'm going to talk briefly about Topaz Denoise AI. This is commercial software that was actually pointed out by Herb. That's when I first heard about it, maybe a year ago. And this uses convolutional neural network with a training set of millions of image pairs, where the pair is a noisy image and then a non-noisy analog of it. There are 5 different models. Again, a model is a trained neural network where it's analyzed a large training set to get its matrix weights.
David, a question.
Okay,
So you said millions of noisy plus clean image pairs, so you mean a pair where one image is noisy and one is not noisy?
Yes.
It's basically the same image.
yes, yes.
Thank you.
So it denoises luminance noise, which is intensity noise that looks like a grainy texture affecting brightness, and color noise, which is specks and patches of incorrect color distributed throughout the image, normally in dark areas. I'll show an example of that in a minute. And there are other features in the software. It doesn't just denoise. It can enhance sharpness and recover image details after denoising. Topaz says use it at the start of your post-processing workflow. I usually use it at the end after deciding whether I even need to use it or not. I'm not going to denoise images that don't need it. There are user adjustable parameters, so you don't just punch a button, although you can. You can vary the strength of the noise removal, the strength of sharpening, and the color noise reduction. And you can brush on a mask to selectively denoise only certain objects in the image. A word about processing speed. On my desktop iMac, to denoise 100 megabyte TIFF file with the low light model, and I'll illustrate that in a minute. If I run it on the CPUs of the computer, and it's a 10-core iMac, it takes 30 seconds, so this doesn't take ages. It runs fairly fast. However, it's supposed to be run on graphics processing units, which is a different chip than the CPU. If I do that and tell it to run only on the built-in GPU, it takes half the amount of time, 15 seconds.
Is that a parameter for Topaz to tell it to do that?
Yes, actually,
It
you
doesn't
can.
automatically use the.
You can set it up to automatically use actually a combination of mainly the GPU and a little bit of the CPU if you automatically run. But I was curious as to what difference it would make. The GPUs are chips designed for AI, and think NVIDIA here, that have hundreds to thousands of small specialized cores for AI analyses. So it seems to make roughly a 2-fold difference in speed. 15 seconds isn't a long time, so it's very usable software. This is an example of a denoised image. This was 100% 100% from an image taken at the Bosque last winter on a trip with Doug and Andy, where the intrepid photographer managed to underexpose by approaching 3 stops. And so you get an image that's obviously grainy, and you can see the birds, but it's pretty noisy, ISO 6400, so that contributed to the noise, as well as the underexposure. If I use the neural network, which is not specified in detail in DxO Photo Lab, to denoise, this is Deep Prime XD, this is the result. So it's got a less grainy, but still somewhat grainy background, better contrast for the birds compared to the background, but you can still see the grain and splotches of color noise. If I use Topaz denoise, using the low light model here. And I tried all the models to see what the difference was. And in this case, for this low light image, the low light model happened to work best. The background is no longer grainy. It's relatively uniform color, kind of grayish. And the birds appear to be a little sharper. If you look closely, there's kind of artifactual edges on some of the birds, but under these circumstances, I think it's doing pretty well. This is a screenshot of the parameters. This can all be done automatically once you select the model. It will even select the model for you if you want. One that it thinks works the best. The remove noise slider is at 84 out of 100, so that's consistent with this being a very noisy image to start with. So at least in this case, the Topaz denoise seems to work pretty well for a challenging image.
Did you compare it with Photoshop or Lightroom
Uh,
noise filters?
I only compared it with TXO Photo Lab.
Okay.
I don't have the modern Photoshop or Lightroom. I would guess they work pretty well.
They do.
I mean,
They work really well.
that's the most advanced software out there as far as I can tell.
Then I'd like to ask a question. The assumption that Topaz, which was the first company I ever heard doing photo AI stuff, they recommend doing the denoise in particular early on in your workflow, if not first.
Yes.
Is it safe to say that Adobe doesn't? Or should we?
I don't know. I would guess that there are benefits to doing it first.
Because it seems to be, I'm trying to think even in Lightroom, it seems to be a ways down in their
On the list of things to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think if you increase contrast, after you denoise, you could bring something back out. If you do all your contrast adjustment before you denoise, then it's denoising the contrast level you're at. If you do something like contrast after you denoise, you could enhance those, the bad edges and things like that. So that's why I think you want to denoise last.
Oh, okay. That's a good point.
I denoise last,
Yeah.
with either Topaz or Lightroom.
I
And
typically
I make
do
the
too.
decision, does it need it? Lightroom does it so cleanly that I just tend to do it even if it doesn't really need it. Even if it's shot at 100 ISO with a really good camera.
What if you were going to be interpolating the image into a larger image? Would that affect the denoise function?
It could.
I would denoise after I enlarge it.
Okay, that was what I was
Yeah.
getting at.
Dave, what do you think about that color shift in there? Is that typical to get some kind of color change when you're using that?
This looks like more of a color shift than that compared to
That's
that.
pretty magenta compared to.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other one, I think.
Yeah, I am partly colorblind, so I try to avoid commenting in detail on color.
Black and white photography.
No, it kind of seems to be in between, but it's not terribly good color recognition. Okay, now I'm going to talk briefly about image sharpening. So this uses Topaz Sharpen AI, which is now in Topaz Photo AI. This is an older version, but it seems to work well. It has 4 models for sharpening. The standard model corrects lens and motion blur. The motion blur model is for motion blur due to subject motion or your shaky camera. Parenthetically, I've found that motion blur generally works the best most of the time, even for non-motion blurred images. Lens out of focus model basically only sharpens the near focus area as well. If it's really out of focus, there's not much you can do about it. It turns the out of focus edges and so on into artifacts on a small scale. The too soft model enhances fine details. So this image was taken at the Bosque last winter. on a photo club trip with Doug and Andy at the feeder station at the visitor center. And there's a feeder here and a large flock of red-winged blackbirds getting meals there. A blackbird flew in and was being glared at by other birds that were already eating and didn't want the competition maybe. And the image was taken at 360 millimeters. This is cropped, but I only took it at a 400th of a second, which is too slow for the wing motion. So with no sharpening, the wingtip is pretty blurred due to the slow shutter speed, relatively slow. The neck feathers are a little bit blurred. Further in on the wing, it's a little blurred. And the tail feathers here are a little blurred as well. So this is no sharpening. If you sharpen it with Topaz Sharpen AI, you get this image, and these are the parameters here. I picked the motion blur. Actually, it automatically picked motion blur after analyzing the image. And these are automatic parameters. And in this image, I asked it to mask automatically select the objects using AI for masking. And so that's shown down here. It found this bird. It missed this bird here on the right entirely. And for the bird flying or hovering, it got the body and part of the right wing. And I had to brush in the rest of it. So if you do that with this motion blur model, it's very blurry. It still doesn't sharpen the end of the wing. The shutter speed's just too slow. The neck feathers, to my eye, appear a little bit sharper, as do the tail feathers, and further in on the wing from the end, it seems to be more distinct as well. So Sharpen AI can help parts of an image that are blurry.
Can you go back to the previous? Replace. Oh, yeah.
I probably should have put them side by side.
Well, then it'd be hard for us to see.
It'd be
Yes,
small
this
lens.
is-
Okay, the next area is enlarging images using AI. And this is Topaz Gigapixel AI. There are similar software and a number of other processing packages. This software will enlarge the X and the Y axis up to 6x if you really want a huge image. And so they don't specify the network. They just say deep learning neural networks. I guess it's a CNN, since that seems to be universally used in image analysis. The original is a crop of an ermine white weasel with a vole, which is maybe a week's worth of lunches, coming up from under the snow. And we didn't know where it was going to come up, so I couldn't zoom in too much initially, because they're really fast. And so you had to take a wider angle picture and crop it just so you got something. At 180%, this is what the ermine looks like. Still reasonably sharp, somewhat fuzzy down there. If you enlarge each axis fourfold and zoom into 50%, I mean, the image is now 16x the area. 4x pixels on each axis. And at 50%, this is what the enlarged image looks like. It's pretty similar to the original cropped image, it's just much larger image to make a large print if you wanted to do that. So this sort of thing can be used for restoring old pictures. As here, upscaling crops. I bought it to upscale 35 millimeter slides. I have 40 years of those to analyze, although most of them aren't any good, and to make large prints. So that's upscaling.
Dave,
Yes.
you mentioned that you don't use Lightroom or Photoshop.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that you primarily use Topaz?
I use
As-
DxO Photo Lab and
Okay.
Topaz.
Okay,
Um,
about the same or
oh, I use Topaz when I need to, basically, sharp
as a backup?
or denoise, yeah. It's mainly DxO Photo Lab, and I use an old version of Lightroom for making panoramas, although I just got PT GUI for a more modern way of creating panoramas.
I want a presentation on PT GUI.
I have to learn how to use it. I'm learning now, but I'm not very far along. Okay. Oh, yes.
Is Topaz a subscription service or can you pay once and download it?
Pay once and download. You can do subscription, but I bought it pay once. I'm not a subscription fan.
You can pay once. and
Yes,
download.
yep.
But
yep.
They
will
haven't done
update it,
what Adobe has done.
but they update it about every year. And so it's, you know, if you want to stay up to date with it,
Yeah,
it's about
Like
like a subscription.
like Adobe used to.
Yeah,
They give you a discount.
yeah.
They give you a discount.
I mean, I found that denoise and sharpen AI works so well, and I don't, at least right now, I don't feel a need to update them. They're probably a year and a half old. The last slide in the section is just to mention use of AI in cameras. So with your digital camera, it's already using AI to do a number of things, more than likely. One thing is it can analyze sensor data to predict the optimal focus point. So this is autofocus. AI can recognize subjects, faces, and eyes and use that information. So a subject would be a dog. We talked about how to identify a dog with the CNN. You can use subjects' faces or eyes to allow continuous autofocus tracking. And so if you're at the Bosque, that's a pretty handy thing. If you're trying to track a bird. Some cameras can track multiple subjects and switch between them for focusing. Some cameras can predict subject movement in advance for better autofocus tracking. And one automatic camera uses scene recognition. So recognizes an image as a landscape image, automatically sets all of the camera settings for landscape based on its training set information, and then takes a picture by itself with no human intervention. So this Canon has autofocus eye tracking, in-camera four-fold upscaling, and two-stop noise reduction built into it. The automatic camera I mentioned is this Canon PowerShot. It has AI scene recognition, and as a result of that, sets the settings appropriately and automatically takes images. It can recognize faces and subjects and track them. So I look at this as a surveillance camera. When you look at it online, the example is you set the camera on a table, like at a meeting or something, and people are walking around doing whatever they do, and the camera is taking automatic pictures anytime it sees something of interest. So I think that's basically surveillance.
Yeah.
This Sony has human pose estimation and eye-based tracking. This Olympus has 8 subject detection simultaneously. It uses AI to create a digital 7-stop neutral density filter and a graduated neutral density filter by blending on the fly many short exposures.
When you say
So-
subject detection, you mean types of subjects like bird, animal?
Yes,
Dogs, cats,
Yes.
trains, planes.
yeah, cars. Okay, so these are just some examples of how AI is already in use in digital
So that
cameras.
new Canon that you got on the left, I haven't got it yet, but it's on the list. You can have it recognize up to like 10 different people.
Oh, really?
Prioritize
Huh.
those people, so like maybe for wedding photographers.
Oh.
I don't know that I'll ever use it, but it's impressive, I think.
Oh. Sounds like a wedding photographer could use it.
Yeah, maybe politics too. Yeah.
Does it have any application at night when visibility isn't as great?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, any of these AI features would really help you if you were taking pictures at night, right?
Well, maybe. The modern sensors, have pretty large dynamic range, and with image stabilization, you can take the slow shutter speeds to get an image at night. I mean, not if it's really dark, but say it's twilight or something fairly dark, you can get usable images under those conditions with the image stabilization. And thus, if it's a reasonable image, AI can work on it.
Two-stop noise reduction might be useful in Milky Way photography.
Yeah, especially
Also, 32 to 16, so it's 2 stops.
Also, like on the Olympus, I don't know if it's technically an AI feature or not, but for night photography, it's got a starry sky autofocus that you aim it at a star and it automatically picks the focus to get the best focus on the stars.
Saves
Saves a lot of photographer error.
So on these ones, like with the eye tracking or being able to track the 10 people. Like I have a fairly old camera, so it has like 9 spots that it picks to focus on. So do these ones sort of eliminate all those spots and then how do you tell it like what's the main thing you want it to focus on? I mean, is it just an infinite possibility of choices?
So you set it to like eye detection, and once it picks that up, that spot you're talking about just moves all over your screen as the subject moves. It tracks that eyeball as it moves.
Like for a bird,
Tracking.
But the new Canon, the OS Mark 5 Mark II, they've already had this out in the previous camera. But they're just putting out 2 new cameras right now, and I've been growing about them for a long time. With this camera, you have to do a little bit of training for your eyes, and I don't know how much, but I'm gonna use this for sure. If you're shooting sports or you're shooting a bird, you look at what you want to focus on. It looks where your eye is looking, and then you push focus button and then it locks on. So what I've read so far is that this camera is a big increase in accuracy over the model that I have, which is very impressive.
So basically it becomes any spot in that lens becomes a focus point versus an autofocus
Well,
point
so the
versus
other thing
older
that
one.
So it's a spot that the AI, the camera says, okay, this is a bird, so I will focus on that object.
Okay, versus
And
having
if there are
set
multiple
spots.
birds, it will focus on several at once, but it will usually prioritize the closest or the largest.
You're talking.
That's what the.
Yeah, Doug is talking about this new model where you can.
It tracks your eye,
It tracks your
not the
so
subject, or in addition to the
Canon
subject's eye.
now has 3 cameras. 2 of them to be released any day.
I mean, this is a feature that Canon used to have like
Yeah.
30 years ago.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
now
about
they've
it.
kind of brought it back in a much better way.
They put it out about 3 or 4 years ago. It's called the R3, and from what I've read, it looks okay for some people, but I haven't really found a lot on it. But it seems like in this camera and the flagship one, which is an R1, it might work really well. So I'm kind of excited about it because I do lots of bird photography. But the other, also to answer your question, even in your camera, perhaps, but definitely in the newer cameras, you can say, hey, I want to do a spot focus. I want to use 9 spots. I want to, I want to use a little rectangle or square, or I want to use a shape that's kind of like this. So that will limit the areas in your on your sensor that are used for focusing. If you don't limit it, I always limit it. I think if you don't limit it, it can probably use the whole sensor. But I always tend to limit it down because I'm usually shooting, landscapes are easy to focus on, but animals are moving things, not just animals, moving things are hard for me to focus. So if that might be adjustable in your camera, and it's still adjustable in the new cameras.
Nikon?
I believe.
Well, then we'll talk after.
Okay, the next section is modifying images using AI. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what are called diffusion models. And the sort of archetype is called stable diffusion. There are open source versions of this available if you want to do it yourself, but getting a training set would be the issue. And what these models do is they start with your image and you give it a text prompt for how to modify the image. So in this beach scene here, which has kind of a weird looking rock in the middle, that is combined with the text prompt pirate ship. And the stable diffusion is actually 3 different neural networks. The first is called a text encoder that understands the text prompt, and that's not so easy. So it connects the text to the images in a training set using a language model to understand the text prompts. It has over 100 million parameters. It has a training set of text image pairs of almost 6 billion pairs. The word here is not just a word, the context confers meaning. And so to the computer, the word is actually 77 vectors, each with 768 dimensions to allow for the complexity of meaning in context for a single word. Now, the text encoder links the text prompt to images. The image information creator, which is another neural network, basically combines the text with the starting image in a neural network. It creates something called a latent image from the combination of the two. The third neural network, called an image decoder, basically turns the latent image that results from the middle neural network into a refined image that obviously includes the image suggested by a text prompt. It adds resolution and detail, and refines colors and textures. So here you start with this beach image with kind of a weird looking rock. You end up with a similar but not identical beach image with a pirate ship replacing the rock. And you can see it added a few people on the shoreline, at least that's what I think they are, and changed the beach image in subtle ways. Looks like it's a little more resolution. To show visually what it's doing, diffusion in this context means adding noise to an image. Well, why would you want to do that? You start with an image of a dog here, add some noise to it. So it's still a dog, noisy. Add more noise, you can still see the dog. By the time you add more noise, unless you're looking adjacent to that image, that just looks like a noisy image. The point of adding the random noise is when you denoise and reverse the process, it generates a diversity of similar images. It doesn't give you back exactly the starting dog. As it denoises in reverse diffusion, it gives a variety of dogs, one of which is shown here. It's similar to this dog, but not identical. So it's a way of generating a number of images to choose from your starting image and text prompt. So this is the main diffusion model that seems to be used, not the only one, in modifying your digital image with a text prompt. An example of this is something called outpainting, where you start with your image and then add to the outside of it to create a new image. So in this example, so you expand beyond the original boundary, but you keep the same style. And style really means a whole collection of features that are learned from the original image to create the new one. So shadows and textures, faces, and so on, if appropriate. And you can expand overly cropped images. You can turn regular image into a panorama. This is widely used in e-commerce. An example using DALL-E, which is an OpenAI software. I think they're up to DALL-E 3 now. The photographer August Camp in 2022 started with this Vermeer painting, 1665, girl with a pearl earring. And I think probably with a variety of text prompts, created this outpainted image. When you look at the website, it doesn't go into the details. So there is the girl with the pearl earring. And if you look at what it's doing step by step, it starts with that image and it looks at it. And I think it thinks, well, there's a shoulder, there has to be an arm underneath. And so it extends an arm out, and the arm sort of matches the luminosity of the face. It adds the rest of her garment. And then I would guess with text prompts that aren't detailed, it adds in a period surrounding to the image. So this is using a diffusion model to create an image-based new digital art, if you will. Now, I'm going to talk about generative AI briefly. So an old example of this, which is not AI, is Photoshop's content-aware fill. So what it does, and this is old technology, but it works under some conditions, is it patches in pixels around a selected area to replace what you're trying to fill in. So it works for small but not large areas. So starting with this picture here, which is from Andy's Photo Club wildflower hike at Wolf Creek Pass a few weeks ago, I selected this daisy flower head here, ran content-aware fill, and it patched in and removed the flower. And yeah, it kind of matches the leaves in the background, and the rock looks like it fits in with the other rock. So I would say it seems to work okay for that small square. If you try and content-aware fill this large flower here, you end up with this square here where it grabs that flower and moves it over here, patches it in, and somehow patches in some petals from this old man of the mountain and gives you kind of an artifact, partially artifactual fill. The rocks look okay, but that flower and those petals aren't supposed to be there. But so it works for small areas, but not larger areas. Well, what happens when you use AI generative fill? This is slightly cautionary. Here I used Photor.com. It's a website that has various AI programs to allow you to do things like this. When you brush this flower to fill it in and run Photor's neural network, and they don't explicitly say what it was, the flower disappears, and you get kind of a slightly smudged yellowish background there. So I would say at best, that's a partial success on this small flower. I think the content-aware fill probably did better, although it was a different image. If you try and fill these 4 flowers here, brushing them, it works, but it gives you a large smudge instead of a small one, where the texture there doesn't match the rocks at all. So I don't know if this is a not very well performing neural network for use on the web as opposed to something in Photoshop, which might work better. But at least in this case, I wouldn't say that's a huge success there. Um,
Have people used the AI healing tools in Photoshop?
Sure.
Have you had good success with it?
Oh, yeah.
Because I find that usually content over fill seems to work better for me. But maybe I'm choosing too big a spot.
Okay, another application is removing lines like telephone lines, which I have to do occasionally. This is an image at Ridgeway taken last spring, where these large trees were just leafing out, and the branches were so heavy that they were wired together to keep them from snapping off in the wind. So there are two wires there that I wanted to remove. This uses Snap Edit on the web. Clean up dot pictures on the web also works just as well. They don't state their AI models, but you basically brush over what you want to fill in to match the rest of the context. And you can see for that wire there, it's removed and it looks like it did a pretty clean job. For that wire, it's removed and it also looks pretty good. So for wires, which are a small part of the image, it looks like this actually works pretty well. It's not automatic, you have to paint over them, but it does work. Another use of generative AI is to replace the sky. So this is Snap Edit again. This is the original image taken at Engineer Pass last spring. In late afternoon facing east, you get to select the skies that you want to patch in to replace the sky. So for this sky here, I think I like it a little better than the original image. The clouds are distributed kind of evenly, not directly over the mountain, and the lighting is about right. Same thing for these clouds there. I like that image a little better than the original. You can patch in different clouds, an approaching storm, or a sunrise. And I don't like the sunrise because normally when you take that sort of picture, you end up exposing for the sky, and the midground and foreground would get darker. And it hasn't taken that into account.
Question, Dave,
Oh,
the skies that you replaced it with, were they skies from other pictures you had, or were they skies that were produced by this tool?
those were skies on the website that they put out there for you to test the
So if you did
capability.
it with your own work, you might be using your own skies.
Yes, yeah,
From other images, okay.
yes. And I tried that using GIMP and Darktable when I was trying to restore an image for a friend. And I could not get it to work well. It was a total pain in the butt. That was not generative AI, but to my eye, this looks like an improvement over what I was trying before. Okay, you can also replace background in an image by AI. This is Remaker.ai. They have a background generator. This is the original image of a bobcat taken at the Bosque last winter, trip with Doug and Andy, photo club trip. You can put it in grass. So there's the bobcat, a totally different background. If that is grass, I have a problem with the scale. This makes, if those are grass blades, the bobcat is turned into a very small cat. So it doesn't necessarily always get the scale right. This other background is a little better. The size of the bobcat relative to the leaves is quite a bit larger. So this can work, but you have to watch what you're doing as far as I can tell. Now, I'm going to talk about style transfer. And I hadn't heard about this until I was doing reading for this talk. What this is applying the style of one image or one artist, like Van Gogh, to an image that you present to the algorithm. It uses a pre-trained convolutional neural network to extract the features from the training image or the training artist, Van Gogh, which is presumably a bunch of Van Gogh paintings. So you combine your image with the style image there, and the neural network matches the features characteristic of the style image to the target image, ends up modifying the target image with style image features, with the constraint that you need to preserve important details of your image. This is Starry Night at Chimney Rock, and the edges of the original image, so the forms are the same. So this is an attempt to turn this Milky Way image with a Kiva into a Van Gogh image. Well, okay. Phosis.com used a training set of Van Gogh image, Starry Night, painted in 1889. And I was looking at the stars there, large, brushed on stars, thinking, oh, it'd be nice if it did that to the stars here. Well, it didn't. This is the Kiva there, so it got that right. It got sort of more details in the midground. It got the clouds in the sky, and it didn't even recognize seas and stars, as far as I can tell, which brings up the point that your style image needs to more closely match the image you present for something like that to happen. So if I had an image with really big stars, it might happen. So that's one image for the style. If you train on a number of paintings, I think, this is photo.com, this image turns into this, which I like a little more. The Kiva is there in the foreground. It's more colorful. The midground is a little darker than the rest of the image, kind of like that. And the sky is more colorful with more obvious brush strokes, as in a Van Gogh painting. So this is style transfer. I looked for an Ansel Adams style, and I couldn't find one. So I don't know what Ansel Adams you'd make out of that, but this essentially turns your image into digital art, in this case, roughly based on the image. Okay, the last example is in painting, where you use generative adversarial networks, which I won't go into too much, for modifying an image. So these networks have a training set of images to learn patterns and features to produce an in-painted image, if you will. So basically, to in-paint, you're changing part of the image, and you use a text prompt. So here you start with a picture of animals grazing on a prairie, and use an in-painting brush and a text prompt of a yellow and red hot air balloon to produce this image. Well, that looks pretty good. I don't know why they included those stars there.
The brush is for placement.
Pardon?
The brush told it where to place it.
Yes.
Okay.
So these generative adversarial networks are two different neural networks that work in combination. One's an image generator that learns the content from the basic image, and then a discriminator, which is a binary classifier, blends this text prompt image with the starting image to create the final product. There's some caveats to this. If you have complex scenes, you might run into difficulties. The one review article said irregular masks can cause problems. That's a pretty irregular mask. That what they actually did. It didn't seem to cause a problem there. If you try and in-paint a large area, you can run into issues, just like generative fill. If the text prompt is not in the training set, so it doesn't know what a hot air balloon is, then you're not going to get the right answer. Be interesting to see what you do get, but it's not going to be the right answer here. If the object is being painted into a complex scene or is partially obscured, then you can have problems. So there are a number of free software options, at least for trying it out on images. I would guess that you need something like Photoshop or Lightroom or larger AI packages to do a good job of it, but it can work.
Doesn't have.
Okay, the last two slides are how to detect and defend against AI generated or modified images. Well, why is this of interest? The photographer Boris Eldexen, who's a German, used DALL-E 2 and text prompts to create this image. So no digital photographic image, purely generative AI, and submitted it to the Sony World Photography Contest in 2023 and won the creative category. And he did it deliberately to raise the issue of the fairness of AI generated images competing with regular digital images. If you look at the image, it's clear that the judges were not expecting an AI image. The hands there have no texture and look kind of artificial. The hand there has a big gap in it that looks very unnatural. The hand is attached to the forearm. It looks like there's a badly fractured bone in there. So it's a generated image. I think those are training set problems. I think there weren't enough fingers and hands and arms in the training set to do a reasonable job. Well, that's easily fixed. An NPR article on this mentioned that the AI generated human images can have, in fact, unrealistic hands, teeth, and then accessories like glasses and jewelry. So how can you detect this? Well, you can do basic detective work and look at the source of the image and its provenance. Some contests now demand raw files if they think an image is overly modified, like the Audubon Society contest. If it looks suspicious, they want your raw file, and that will work until AI generated raw files come into existence. And that is only a matter of time, probably, if there's any interest. So how do you use AI to detect this? One way to do it is to use neural network binary classifiers. Binary means it's making a decision. Is the image fake, generated by AI, or is it real? And so it has to have a training set of a large number of fake and real image pairs, and that exists. The binary classifier is ResNet 50, which was originally created by Microsoft. This Gen image data set has over 1 million of these fake and real image pairs in 1,000 different image classes. So this paper published in 2023, about a year ago, went into detail on how this works. So when the binary classifier is trained on a specific image generator like DALL-E, and the image was in fact created by the same generator, it's 98% accurate. If the image was created by a different generator, then the accuracy drops to 50 to 67%. And the range is, I just picked one binary classifier, but they tested 6 or 7 different binary classifiers with the same training set. And so you get a spread, but if the image is from a different generator, it doesn't do such a good job. If you JPEG compress the image after generating it, the accuracy drops to 50%. If you deliberately blur the image, You get a range of accuracies from 50 to 97% for the 6 or 7 binary classifiers. If you increase the number of images in the training set or the number of image classes by tenfold, the accuracy goes up 10 to 20%. So the bottom line here is if you know the image generator, you can reach a decision, real or fake. If you don't, then it doesn't work so well. The solution for that would be to enlarge the training set to include images from all of the common image generators. And then I think you'd have a viable detector algorithm for this. The last slide is what I call image defense. So companies that use generative AI have harvested images, often without permission, from publicly available images on the internet. It's called web scraping for their training sets. And so Meta, Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, and others did this. A number of these companies are being sued now for that. The artists, the photographers want compensation for that use of their image. I don't know that the compensation would be large dollar amounts, but maybe something. A group at the University of Chicago figured out a way to deal with this. So they created the program called Nightshade, which refers to plants in that category of plants that produce toxic alkaloids to combat non-consent image scraping. So what it does is it invisibly at the macro level alters the pixels to cause image mislabeling. So the image looks the same, but when you pixel peep, the pixels are different in a designed way so that I'll show this in a minute. The image is mislabeled. So if it's an image of a dog, the poisoning can spread to related image categories like puppy. This is hard to detect and remove. So these companies, if they wanted to combat that, would have to write software to do that. And that would be probably a bit expensive and take a lot of time. This group also came up with a second program called Blaze, which alters pixels in a different way to cause misinterpretation of the image category. So it invisibly alters feature space, so not just pixels, but collections of pixels that represent features. And you end up masking an image with a different art style. So how does this look in practice? So using the image generator Stable Diffusion, one of their more modern models, which has extra large training set, the University of Chicago group submitted poison images. So here with Stable Diffusion, you use a text prompt dog. Well, with the unpoisoned model, you get an image of a dog. It looks normal. If you text prompt a car, you get an old car. I don't know why it's not a Maserati, but that's what it is. If you poison the model with 50 poison samples, and the training sets for something like this are billions of images, it can be 50 poison samples. And I think the samples are deliberately poisoned to make a dog look like a cat. They don't state that in the article, but just looking at what happens, I think that's what's going on. So with 50 poison samples, you get another dog, but it has too many legs. With 100 poison samples, it turns into a distorted cat. With 300 poison samples, it looks like a regular cat. So that's not too useful for a training set designed to analyze dogs. For the car, with 50 poison samples, you get a distorted car. With 100 poison samples, you get a close-up of a cow. With 300, you get the whole cow. I think it's deliberately poisoned to turn cars into cows. So this is the software that can defend against web scraping like this.
But you said the original image still looks the same to our eyes.
Yes, the alterations are at the pixel level. If you read the article, there are different strengths of poisoning. And the more severe modifications of the pixel apparently do alter the image a little bit. But what they were trying to do is make the image look normal, even though it's poisoned. But if you ramp up the poisoning, then the image apparently looks different in some way.
So artists, so photographers are using these to poison their image, so if they get scraped, it's gonna screw the Google, the people who are scraping it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you get that software and you say, apply this to my
Yeah.
public
Sounds like
website.
How to fix
Yes.
that.
Okay,
This is very new, so I haven't downloaded the software to try it.
interesting.
You know, I'm not sure my images are wonderful enough to make the effort, but Doug's
Right.
images might be,
Mhm.
or Chris's, or Andy's. Okay, so this is a summary slide. What's happened is use of AI is blurring the line between digital photography and digital art. So at the lower end of AI processing, which I call normal post-processing, that a lot of us are already doing, these convolutional neural networks can be used for sharpening, denoising, changing the texture of an image, changing the lighting and exposure, and correcting minor imperfections like getting rid of telephone lines. When you modify the image more by changing objects in the image, adding or deleting or replacing, or inpainting, which is the same thing, then you get further along in the transition from digital photography to digital art. When you get to major modifications, and these are using diffusion and GAN models for generative AI, like replacing the background, replacing the sky, or outpainting, or even style transfer. This is getting rather close to digital art, even though you start with your own image. So photography is changing very rapidly. I think you can make very interesting images. I don't know if I'd call them photographs anymore, but they can still be nice images. So at this stage, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Dave,
Yes.
there seems to be an issue with copyright of AI images. Are you up on that?
Not too much. Some of the lawsuits against Meta and so on for web scraping are copyright infringement lawsuits. I'm not a lawyer, but I would imagine if your web scraped image says copyright Daryl Saffer, that would be copyright
So I
infringement.
think what Daryl is talking about is if you use some of these AI techniques to modify your image, some copyright attorneys say you can't copyright that final image because
Right.
it was created by a machine, not by the photographer.
Okay, well, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. Use of the generative AI is potentially more complicated than I've indicated here. Boris Eldegson in an interview mentioned that he spent a lot of time learning how to use text prompts to create his image. So he had a lot of trial and error, experienced photographer. So one, I suppose, might argue there was some creative process involved in that, but I don't know where the boundaries are on that.
The last seminar I saw was held by an attorney. And she said that right now it's in a state of flux. That, there's so many parameters involved as to what's created by AI and what's created by the artist. But at that point, you had to declare whether AI was used in creating the image.
Yes.
So it'd be interesting,
Yeah. I mean, contests are paying a lot more attention to that now.
right?
That-
As they should.
Yeah.
More questions? John?
Could you give Andy a list of those websites you mentioned that we could send out then to the, well, you mentioned quite a few websites.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can make the talk available. Like Andy has a PDF of it if you want that. Very useful if you have insomnia issues. Yeah, Andy can hand out the PDF file of the talk if you want, and the websites.
Any questions from Zoom?
AI, yeah.
It's a non-Zoom question.
That way, there
So, yeah.
you are.
Our photo clubs, and ours in general and ours in specific, beginning to establish rules for what becomes unacceptable use of AI.
Thank you for volunteering to write those rules.
Doug volunteer.
Volunteer twice tonight.
Yeah, but it's very interesting, you know, I do some stuff.
Quite an
my
interesting
photos
topic.
that, I think it's okay for myself, that if someone else could look at it and say, it's good or not good, I would feel like I needed to tell them, well, hey, that tree was a dead tree when I took the picture, now it's a live tree.
To my mind, it's an ethical issue.
It is, yeah.
And in the presentation next month, there's an example that has nothing to do with AI, but it's what Andy would call a composition, where you take two digital images and components from one into the other. And it's virtually impossible for most people to tell the difference. And I was waiting for some, scanning technology to scan these images to find, fuzzy edges where you composite two parts of an image together. It's the Wild West.
My impression is that photo clubs and contests are moving towards AI categories explicitly separate from just photography categories, and or declaring ahead of time exactly what you did to the image.
And
But-
even at this time, as we do presentations up there, the photographer might say, this is a modified image, or this is right out of the camera. So people like I do not understand that.
So just a little reference here, Underwater Photography Club that I'm involved with in Houston. Because people do like to do some creative stuff. Once a year, we have anything goes kind of contest. And it allows people to do the creative things to enter. It's always a fun, entertaining contest to participate in.
Yeah, in our annual contest, we usually have something similar, which is called the creative category. And, I think the statement is that it's clearly modified from reality, something like that.
Yeah, one caveat we put on our contest is that you have to take the photos of every element in the photo. So you can't just grab a picture of New York skyline and utilize that in photos. You have to use the photos that you take.
More questions? Yeah, so I will make the PDF of Dave's talk available so that you can get those websites and study things at your leisure. And if there are no more questions, then we'll move on to our image share session.
Thank you, Dave.
Yes. Any more flying drives?
Could you start with mine? It would be very apropos to this discussion. Yes. So it's got my name on it, Dukeman.
Okay.
Pictures that we have. Don't have anybody else. Done with those styles. I know. Well, I think that's
Well, so is it?
Something very big.
No, I'm working with him.
Inpatient nurse.
No.
This is pure AI. Out the window. One of my days at work. I tried, let me tell you, I tried to put 747, B-747 in there. Got just some wing. And then I said, a B-52 bomber. It came back and it said, you're not following the rules of whatever it is. God forbid there's a bomber, right? All right, go ahead.
So, was
So
this
you
a
added-
Photoshop?
This is Photoshop AI, generative fill. Can you tell where it is?
Oh, yeah.
It's the bird, that's all.
Yes.
Everything else is real, right?
Yeah.
I have no idea, I just said bird.
It's got like a weird.
Yes, and so there's a telltale, part of fun, I guess, but, sign.
Where is that exactly?
Well, that's at, near the Four Corners area. Monument Valley. And.
There you go.
I didn't realize.
But this is very interesting. It got the reflection on the water.
Wow.
Yeah, that's great.
Must be real.
I'm detecting it.
Yeah, I just said a monster and, there it is. Not very bright.
That's excellent. I think the, tourism board could probably use it.
It's going after the people in the hippie.
Right, sure.
Now, this one, I just said, put a tall masted ship on this little river. It's like obvious that it's not gonna be there. Yeah, the scale is a little off, I would say. I tried the aircraft carrier, it would not come up with. But these were fun pictures I thought I'd bring out tonight since we're talking about that stuff.
Excellent.
And then, just down in Corpus Christi. And, again, I tried to aircraft carrier on the right, just gave me some kind of ship. And I said, a cruise ship, and I put that on the left. That one came in pretty well.
It's more like a river barge.
Yeah. Were you using a digital prompt to write something in the?
Yes. Yes, cruise ship. You basically in Photoshop, you just take a highlighted area, either a circle or a square. And then it gives you the prompt and then generative fill prompt, cruise ship, boom. Puts it
You
right on.
could put a tiger there if you wanted to. right?
Yeah, you could, yeah.
Okay, some great examples.
Weird.
Whatever your topic.
Like the monster.
Like I tried to do a Loch Ness monster, it wouldn't go there.
Wouldn't go with Loch Ness. Well, it's heard that's not real.
Oh, that's right.
The debunk.
Well, Annie's pulling up next, and I'll tell you a little bit. I frequently make music sync slideshows, my photos, and there is a program called Suno, SUNO, and you can make songs. And it's like magic. You can tell it's a genre, the type of music you want, how long you want it to be. If you want vocals in there, you can just give some keywords. And I've made songs for my 2-year-old little great nephew, for his birthday, made his grandparents cry. My friend, after I talked about it, my friend made a song for his family reunion and all the people were crying at his family reunion. But you can do anything, instrumental or with vocals. And I think you can do 5 free songs a day without paying for the subscription. It's SUNO. You search that up.
Interesting.
Suno Music. It's a lot of fun to play with.
So who owns the copyright of the song?
And if you pay for the subscription, I'm glad you asked that. If you pay for the subscription to the program, you own the copyright. If you don't pay for a subscription, if you're doing the free ones, you do not own the copyright. And I made a song about Pagosa Springs. You like the red
Oh, yeah, it was good.
You just enter keywords in there and it's like magic.
That was nice.
Okay, whose are these?
So, I'm a newbie here, second time. I'm a photojournalist by training. I shoot action rodeos and I go looking for trouble. It was a local rodeo that I was attending in California. And I generally prefer to do post-production in black and white. It's something like this, and this is a barrel racer being successful at what she does.
Great action shot.
Cool. Oh, neat.
So my wife and I did a road trip last summer between Vienna and Geneva. And we paid a visit to this cathedral in Innsbruck, and I was shooting with a 24-70. And I was kind of laying down on the ground when I did that. So. Very nice.
It's got a very nice feeling of the depth of the cathedral there.
And I like that it's not right exactly centered.
Leaving lines.
I love it.
Oh,
So I like to joke, I met with the bull and bull rider before the shot, and asked them to pose for me. You know, this, I shot this at about 60 yards with a 400mm lens, and the bull was okay, and it took 2 people to get the poor cowboy off the balcony.
So, I noticed the bull rider's wearing a helmet. I don't go to a lot of rodeos these days, but I grew up going to rodeos because my dad was chairman of the fair board for 25 years. They didn't wear helmets in those days.
Just a couple of things that are interesting about, I didn't realize this until somebody else pointed it out to me when they were looking at it. He's wearing a Kevlar vest, and he's wearing a helmet. And if you look at his arm, and I didn't notice this for a while, he's got a tattoo on the arm. And it's an eagle feather. You can also barely make out the words "in God," and I'm assuming that it finished with "we trust." Now, this was a California Pro Rodeo. So I did an attachment, sent an email to their headquarters to find out if we could identify who this guy was. They never got back to me. We're on Facebook, so no one knows who it is. Probably.
That was look at this one.
So this is our cat Happy, and it took me an hour to get her to cooperate. And I was sitting on our deck, and she was just sitting there. I was using a 400mm, and I just waited and waited and waited. And finally, she turned around, and I got her. She and I, my whole family, were Dixie Fire survivors. I was on the volunteer fire department in a little town where the fire was taking place. My wife was with her friend Adrian here in Alaska while the fire was burning.
That's the best place to be when that fire was.
And anyway, I got to not go anywhere because I was in the fire department, and Happy manned the house with me during the fire.
Great shot. It's sharp, but it needs to be sharp.
PG&E was doing all sorts of new equipment installations up the Feather River Canyon. I'm a former helicopter crewman with the Forest Service, and I knew they were doing this work. So I found out where their helipad was, and I asked if I could just hang out, start photographing. And I can't remember whether I asked this guy to. I spoke with all the pilots, and Like I mentioned to him, I was gonna take a shot like this and please don't crash. That's my affair.
Nice.
Very good.
Excellent. Thank you for bringing those.
Good, thank you.
I just hear you say you're doing touchy feely across the room.
So these are my shots.
Dogs.
We recently went to Norway and to Denmark. And in Norway, we were regular to a single city in Oslo, not long enough, but then we spent 9 nights either in Svalbard or boating around Svalbard. And Svalbard is an archipelago that's owned by Norway, and it's above the Arctic Circle. I think it gets almost to 80 degrees. I don't remember what the Arctic Circle is. It's around 67 degrees or something. So we had sun, 24-hour sun. And so there's lots of fjords when you sail through the archipelago. And this was might have been our first day. I'm not sure. We actually had pretty crummy weather. I wish we'd had more weather like this. So anyhow, that's somewhere in Svalbard. And
This isn't anybody in our group, is it?
this was me before I had plastic surgery. The main reason to go on this trip, I guess, for most was polar bears, but there's also walruses, and I really like the walrus shots that I got, and I've got quite a few. And we used Zodiacs. We're on a 42-meter boat, and we had 12 guests, and I'm not sure how many crew. There was probably a comparable number of crew. And there was 2 guys who were the guides for the boats, and then this was a lunch workshop. So there's another layer of 2 people they call them photo pros for lunch. But anyhow, the 2 guys who are it's for Wild Photo, and I would recommend them or looking into them if you're interested. Wildphoto.com. They would be looking 24 hours a day during the 24 hours of light, unless we knew we were just sailing for a destination and they weren't going to stop. And that was generally because the weather was too crappy. You can't take Zodiacs, or you shouldn't take Zodiacs out if it gets too choppy and too windy. And this is the first time I've been on Zodiacs. So anyhow, they know where these walruses are and where they'll be congregating. And so that was one of our targets. And so we got out on the land and we spent an hour or 2 photographing, I think you can call them pods, herds, and there's one other term too.
How close were you, Doug?
That I was shooting with my 1:500, and I'm not sure that was zoomed to. It's cropped, but it's not a severe crop. So I was probably within 50 yards, I think, and I was probably lying down when I.
50 yards, did you say?
Yeah, the
Okay.
walruses can't move. In the water is a whole other story. So they weren't disturbed us. Yeah, I think probably 50 yards, and that's could very well be at 500 millimeters. And this was our first encounter with a polar bear. So the fjord that I showed you earlier, I think this was on the way to the fjord. And so this was like our first day, or might have been we sailed for a day, and it was really our second day. And we only had light like this really a couple of times, which is unfortunate because it's a really amazingly impressive and beautiful area. And I shot that with my 1:500, but I was using a crop sensor camera. And I'm not sure if I was using I was not using a crop sensor camera for the walruses. So this could be as high as 800 millimeters, and he was on the shore, and I'm pretty sure we were at least 50 yards away, if not more.
And you were in the Zodiac or on?
Yeah, we're in the Zodiac. No, actually, I don't have pictures in this set, but one time we went on land to shoot the Arctic foxes and the reindeer. And some polar bears appeared. And they said, okay, we gotta go.
Time's up.
They carry rifles, and they carry flare guns, and I mean, they got some expensive polar bears there. Occasionally, they will attack the human. We had one really good encounter. We had the encounter you just saw, and then we had one other really good encounter. This polar bear was hunting on the ice and swimming around, and even went after a couple of seals, and so we got pictures of it jumping into the water. My pictures of it jumping, I know they're jumping, but they aren't really that exciting. So again, this was shot from Zodiac with my 1:500 and full frame Canon R5.
Pretty impressive mountain.
So one of the things they talked about is to not just take portraits, but try and include landscape, make it more of a naturescape, or I forget what they, is different, environmental. And this one's cropped quite a bit. There is actually quite a bit more. There's more ice in the front and there's more in the back. And I posted on Facebook, and one of my friends, well, I think I might crop out some of the ice. So that's the version you got tonight. So I've been interested in, this doesn't qualify, I guess, quite as high key photography, they told me, but it's just very high contrast, black and white. High key photography might have less detail in it, and it's something I want to learn about. High key photography has a lot of blown out backgrounds, and I mean, I've done it before in color, but I've never really specifically tried to do it that much. So this was sort of an attempt at that in Lightroom. And the pros for Munch said that you could do it a lot better in Photoshop than in Lightroom. And one of them was doing a really nice high key in Lightroom, which I never got to see the finished product because they weren't supposed to be showing off their stuff.
So this is post-processing.
It's, yeah, it's post-processing. I have a
Okay.
color version of this picture.
Okay.
The color version's pretty nice
Right.
as well.
Yeah, I think you posted the color version also, didn't you?
I'm not sure, because I posted a couple black and whites as well. There's a really good chance of it.
Doug, I don't know if I know the right terminology, but on that last one, did you do a lot of post-processing where you lightened up certain areas of his fur and darkened up areas?
I did lots of masking.
Masking that,
Yeah, I do a lot of masking.
Yeah.
One of the things, the way the light was, so this is basically this overcast light. And the later ones when he was hunting, and there was like this band of really light fur on his back. And I saw it in other people's pictures too, and so I worked on that quite a bit, even though I didn't blow it out.
To really accent it.
Well, to just bring the texture back and make it go the way I wanted it, rather than the way it really was, I guess. But I think it was still pass even if I give him the raw photo. It's not modified that much. So yeah, I do a lot of masking.
Yeah.
That folder.
All right.
Whoops.
That looks local.
Yeah. Well, so one of my favorite parts of this, Tony, are those sunflowers, daisies? I call them black-eyed Susans,
That's what
but
my mom called it.
These are not black-eyed Susans.
I didn't think they really were. So what are they?
They're sunflowers.
They're sunflowers. Okay, that's kind of what I thought they
But
were.
the ones that we harvest only have one flower per stalk.
Right.
These are probably annual sunflowers.
Like
The
wild
annual, okay.
sunflowers. So it's one of my favorite times is this time of year where there's just I mean, you can't help but smile when you drive down the road and see sunflowers everywhere. I have yet to feel like I got a really
You're taking a
good picture of them, but I kind of enjoyed this one with just that one tree in the back and the.
Later in the fall, my wife and I go out and harvest the seeds. Try to spread them all over the yard.
I know, I just love them. They just make me feel happy. So then I sat at one little patch of these sunflowers and for probably about 2 hours and just watched the different birds and mostly birds that came through. So this is a green-tailed towhee. who paid a visit very shortly and sat there and posed for me. And then that, I believe, is a pine siskin who, there was a whole bunch of them, but this one landed really close to where I was sitting, hanging on, eating upside down.
Enjoying the feast.
Yeah,
That's cute.
that was a little house wren
Hmm.
who also joined in the patch. And I tried for the first time Lightroom generative AI and took out, right behind him was just a big stem and you couldn't see the flower at the top. And so I asked it to take out that stem behind him. And that was I'm so bad I cannot identify female hummingbirds for the life of me. I think it's a broadtail. But this little hummingbird was defending this little patch of sunflowers from all of the rest of the
That
hummingbirds.
sounds like a rufous, but
It did kind of sound like a rufous,
Yeah.
but Merlin kept identifying it as a broadtail, so I don't really know because they're hard to tell.
It's hard to tell for the females.
But, and my favorite thing is if you really pixel peep, if you look in his eye, you can see a reflection of the sunflower. That little reflection in his eye, if you really blow it up, looks like the sunflower.
It's a catch later, right?
Yeah,
You're using the sunflower as a nice yellow reflector.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Very nice.
So what do black diamonds look like?
Black centers.
Very dark. So they're much shorter. The flowers are pretty good size.
Do they grow wild back east?
They grew wild in Texas. I don't know about back east.
Yeah, this was the early morning, the pond was really still until a fish jumped. And so I got the ripples.
I love the pattern.
Yeah, that's great.
Just flat irons. I was visited with my cousin a couple of weeks ago and we were up there on Flagstaff Road up behind there and noticed the Alexander fire before it was on the news. And then there was a fire up there a few days later. Rendered it black and white. I too like the sunflowers. I like the way this was backlit and so this is, I didn't get to see the Perseus, but I got this. The clouds are so full with the moon up there. So, yeah,
That old dark 30 or was that?
that is. It was probably about 10 o'clock. And then this. So one of the things this was taken was my iPhone 15 Max.
Wow.
And I just about decided that it does a wee bit of photo stacking when you've got low light.
It does a lot of photo stacking. Not
Yeah.
just a wee bit.
Yeah, okay. I hadn't read that, but I figured it out. That that's what was happening and appreciate it quite a bit. And then I read, just before I came tonight, I Googled it and it talked about triple stacking or something.
I determined it was stacking before you read it.
Well, for one thing, when you take a low light photo, it has this, like this timer that runs across the screen. So I think you're supposed to hold the thing still while that's still going. And just the way the stars turn out.
So it's actually averaging and compositing probably hundreds of photos during that time. So different. I still like that reflection a lot.
Yep.
Very nice.
We're waiting.
Okay, these were taken at the north rim of the Grand Canyon last weekend. I'd never been there, and Andy had mentioned that going during monsoon season might be a good idea. I was there last January and it was overcast the whole time, so the lighting wasn't very good. Better this time. This is the Point Imperial before sunrise. And I like the colors basically in the image.
Dave, single shot, not HDR.
Single shot. This is, I don't know, rain shadow, I guess. Well, also at point, no, this is Cape Royal. Where you could see the threads of rain coming down. I like the clouds in the image. Lightened up the foreground a little bit. This was indicative of the weather, and this was good weather. It was almost too much of a good thing, monsoon rain wise. It was probably one of the most intense hailstorms I've been in.
Wow.
My car wasn't damaged, fortunately. There were small hailstones, but it was really coming down. There was hail at the side of the road a day later from that storm.
Was this blue hour?
Pardon?
Was this blue hour?
No, this is probably mid-afternoon. It was clouding up and pretty overcast. This was just before the thunder and lightning started the afternoon. This is branches. I like the pattern of branches being shed from some dead trees. So went there to hopefully get some Milky Way, but it's cloudy both nights I was there. So instead of Milky Way, I got branches. This is a view from the lodge. So very old wooden lodge. There are kind of light rain obscuring the background a little bit. So I took the image for the forms of the ridges. And it's raining enough so the layers of ridges towards the top are obscured. So you can't quite tell what they are.
And we're looking south from the north rim of the Grand Canyon here?
Yes.
Okay. Nice.
I like the layering.
And this is a black and white version early in the morning at Point Imperial. It was also raining. I like the forms of the ridges of the rain.
I like the depth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, all the layers give you that sense of depth.
Really nice.
Very nice.
Andy, does the club usually have a black and white category for the contest?
We have not had a black and white specific category. I guess.
Found out at the county fair, if you have enough categories, you know.
Yeah, you too could win it all. Yeah, I think Herb mentioned that between the two fairs, he made off with about $10.
How much did you pay in interest?
He didn't divulge that information.
I think the fair here is speed.
Okay, Russ.
This was at Lake LBJ in April. I had to set the camera up to do timed shots because I couldn't figure out on my Nikon how to make the mirror stay up. Period. So I had to do it with pauses so that the vibrations would stop, and it's still really quiet. The surprise in this picture was, one, it's the actual eclipse. It was very cloudy, and it was like the picture took right when there was a hole. I had to look it up, and those are actually solar prominences.
Yeah.
I would not have thought with a 600mm lens, I would have seen
Yeah.
Which model of Nikon do you have?
D5300.
Is there a little mode dial on the left top? No, okay.
This was February in Hawaii, southwest coast off of Kauai.
Humpback?
Yep, we ran into a pod of juveniles, like a pod of like 20 of them. And the guy slowed the boat down. It wasn't a whale watch tour, just we were going to the Nepali coast on the north side. And as we came back, we found these guys and they were playing. There was one adult, and that's that one. I guess it was waving. Nobody breached or anything. They just kept rolling and bouncing into one another, slapping one another, crisscrossing under the bow. You could tell it was a bunch of kids.
Cool.
And that was also while I was seasick.
Oh, you were seasick.
I was doing great until he slowed the boat down, and we started doing that kind of corkscrew motion. That was it for me.
Kathy on Zoom. If you could unmute.
All right. Well, I guess I'll join the black and white crowd tonight. So I got to go to Lake Clark in Alaska, and it was a fantastic trip, not only for the opportunity to photograph bears, but the chef there is awesome. So when Andy and Doug get to go next month, hopefully you'll get the same guide we did. His name's Dave Rasmus. He was excellent. And
Cinnamon.
Doug is asking if you were at Silver Salmon.
yes.
Okay.
Yep. So it was really hard to pick 5 for tonight, but I think this one was my favorite. It just looks so serene and backlit, and I love it.
Yeah, I love that lighting.
Yeah, so this one was really cool. We got to watch him take a whole bath.
Say AI.
Yeah, no AI involved. But you can see the rock in his hands, and he actually, or she, I don't know, was using it to exfoliate, like was rubbing it on its ear.
Full spa treatment.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one of my favorites.
Wow.
Yeah, my first bird in flight where he barely, was out of the water, but I was so thrilled he was in focus.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Did it get the fish?
Great shot.
Thank you. We also got to go to Brooks Falls, and the one shot I got, the iconic one, like Mangelsson, where the salmon's jumping in his mouth. Mine was blurry. So be looking at that AI stuff that Dave was talking about. But this guy, I just thought he was really cute sitting there on the rock.
Very nice.
Very nice.
It's like a great trip.
Yeah, thank you. It was. So you guys will have a great trip next month too.
Liz?
Hi. So this was just actually the water looked really green. It was coming down from some of the mountains that have a lot of the, I guess, the oxidation, different minerals in it. And just caught that, thought it looked kind of cool. And that is, well, almost where the Rio Grande starts. So it's a real deep canyon at the headwaters.
Cool rock formations.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, they're bizarre. And again, another little lake or reservoir that's up north near the Rio Grande. These guys like to take a bath there. And of course, the other thing that's really funny about this is one of the next shots, which I didn't include, is the little guy was trying to nurse in the water. It's pretty funny. And there's Pop, I guess.
Like the duck is taking a bath over here.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, the ducks were pretty entertaining, but the moose didn't seem to worry about it. And this is up near the Continental Divide reservoir, I guess, and just weird rock formations.
I see at least 3 domes in there.
Yeah, I know. You can come up with a lot of things on this one.
Excellent.
Thanks.
These are mine. Summer, I'm usually
I actually stay there for a
spending a
minute.
lot of time hiking and up along the Continental Divide. A few weeks ago, it had rained the night before, so raindrops on the chiming bells. Prairie smoke. Thank you. I was losing my mind there for a minute. This is up at Crater Lake on a recent hike. And the same hike, one of the challenges during monsoon season is to get back to the car before you get wet. Kind of just made it this day. This is a fly. Mountain death camas.
Andy, when you went on your wildflower hike, were you shooting with a macro lens?
So on that hike, on the club,
Uh-huh.
wildflower hike, part of the time I was using a macro lens, part of the time I was using an ultra wide angle lens that focuses pretty closely.
Right. Okay.
Great.
That's my granddaughter and they're about 50 yards away. I thought we had to have at least one person in this one.
Yeah. You don't want to be too close in case they.
Oh, yeah, they don't, then they freeze up. You want to get them natural.
Yeah.
Where's that? Alaska. And get them in the natural, and then the next shot is Watson. That's down in Holman,
Uh-huh.
the very end of this bit. Did you try and find Eagles on here or not? Yeah.
You don't have
Were
to
you
try very
successful?
hard.
Yeah, we did. Have quite a few.
Greg, when were you there?
June,
Okay.
month of June.
They're so white.
That's at the Chino Hot Springs. I don't know if any of you have been there. It's one of those Anchorage, and it's gonna be a hotel. You guys got nothing but money.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Airplane?
It's a hotel in there. Look at that.
The rooms would be in the fuselage?
Yeah, but geothermal
Yeah, the geothermal.
turbine
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Got a lot of old stuff.
There's just
One
so
big
much
pool.
to see up there.
Versus what, we're putting in 10 more pools downtown.
These are some Mexican hand flowers in our house.
They speak Spanish?
No, sir. And they don't seem to speak at all. This is a storm last month near Las Vegas, New Mexico. I was when I started out, I was just going up hills around the Glorieta Pass and shoot lightning, but then I saw that this storm near Las Vegas had a severe thunderstorm warning was moving toward me, so I went over there and it exceeded my expectations, that wall cloud. In terms of tonight's topic, I will mention there was a big thick wire right across the middle. Content aware Phil handled that nicely. So this is the same storm later. That was the only really good lightning shot I got. Right. That was with the lightning trigger. And then yesterday I was driving back from Santa Fe to here. And it was a pretty nice day here most of the day, and a pretty nice day in Santa Fe. It was stormed like crazy most of the way back. And then I stopped near Promo, that picture.
That lightning shot was especially impressive.
That was a lightning trigger.
John, were you on a tripod?
Actually, there was better lightning than that, but it was the first time I used the trigger in quite a while. I messed up about every way you could.
No, that didn't.
Were you on a tripod?
No, I was just
Handhold?
stabilizing the camera on the edge of the window. The car, below the car.
April, I was in the Philippines for a couple of weeks, and this is just a squid at night, by 3 or 4 inches long.
Where were you?
It's in the Philippines.
No, I mean, in
Oh.
relation to the photo, I mean, we went.
Right in front of it. Scuba diving, yeah, scuba diving, yes.
How big is it?
It's probably 3 or 4 inches. I shot it with a 60mm macro lens.
Did you do anything to illuminate it? Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, it was a nighttime, it's been really dark out at night. Yeah, I used two
Twin
fairly
lights.
powerful flashes.
Yeah.
That was the line underwater, I would write it back tonight. In February, I think we went to San Miguel de Allende in Mexico. This is the big cathedral there on the square, it's really pretty. Sort of a little after sunset.
Great light balance.
Yeah, nice sky.
Yeah. And again, San Miguel, I took a few pictures in here. A lot of colors there. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The whole city is, so it's very regulated on the signage and the colors of the buildings. I think the city actually paints the buildings to control the colors and things like that. And we had Guanajuato, Mexico. So we did a day trip over there. And it was kind of famous lookout where you can look down upon the city and see all the different colors and hodgepodge of buildings all crammed together.
So here, there's no regulation. You can paint
Yeah,
whatever
right.
color you want.
I think Guanajuato may also be a UNESCO World Heritage Site city. There's a lot of really cool stuff there, a lot of variety for wandering around and taking photos. I kind of wish we had split the time, half in San Miguel and half in Guanajuato. San Miguel is a little homogeneous, just kind of the same every street. March, we went to Nebraska for the sandhill migration. And I had a series of photos from this morning with the sun, but I just grabbed one to share today.
Was that Carney?
Yes. If you don't know, I think 300,000 to 500,000 sandhills migrate through there in March.
The lessers.
No, like Joe was complaining, these are little ones. I'm like, what? So we realized that there are lesser and greater sandhill cranes, which I did not know. So apparently most of the ones in Kearney are the smaller.
Yeah, Joe won't let you forget.
Yeah, trust me, we had a big joking session. I was giving him a hard time, but he was right. And I just kept saying they're smaller because they're further away. I was giving him a hard time.
Terrific.
But you are gonna do some greater ones later, right?
Maybe. I've never really been to Bosque, I need to go.
They got post.
You do.
Yeah, but I go there.
We'll go in December. probably.
Okay, did I get everyone done? No, you can't have it.
Thanks so much.
Lights?
Okay, well, thanks again to Dave for the great presentation and lots of things I think about there. The picture of the article.
It was fascinating, really.
I'm more or less done with it.
Yeah.
So good job.
Thanks to everyone who took part in the image share this evening. Do lots of great images.
Thank you.
Do I have a camera? Yes.
We will
So I was with the.
Let me just.